G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and that you had a fantastic weekend. Now, something has come across my desk and has been a little bit in the media, and I just have to talk about it. At first I thought maybe not, but I just have to. So I was made aware of this incident in late July, so about 5 or 6 weeks back, and I was absolutely shocked. And to be honest, I half thought I was actually being bullshitted too. And of course, this is the incident that has gone into the media now about Jordan Chadwick, an ex-Scots Guard, having his hands found in a body of water, sadly killed. Now, this has only been really made public about 2 days ago by multiple media outlets, including the BBC. So we're going to talk about this. Now, I have fairly vast contacts in Ukraine with foreign guys, and there's absolutely been some varying stories, and some of these stories have changed over what happened that 5 or 6 weeks back when I was initially told and what has come out now and what people are saying. But there are two things that have absolutely been unchanging across everyone's stories, and between stories are the same, that this was not the Russians, that this was something on the inside. Now, this is opposite to what a lot of Twitter pages who probably have no fucking clue, have never bloody heard or seen of what Ukraine is before the war kicked off, and they could get some more likes. And number two being that the body of water that he was found in is not what drowned him. Being what was found in his lungs was not that water. And that is what I'm being told. Now, also, one person was willing to send me a written statement that is to his knowledge of what occurred and what he had reached out and had a look around as well. But that said, in the off-record conversations that I'd also had, both when this happened and now, there are points of disagreement to the statement that I was sent. Like I say, with everything, you need to take everything in all of the media space around this, social, official, me, everyone, including me. You need to take this all with a grain of salt. So we're going to look over the BBC article as well as I think one from The Guardian, and then we're going to look at the statement as well. So let's look at what the BBC first released, and this was actually emailed to me off a guy. This is when I first knew that this had been made public. So a British man fighting in Ukraine found dead in water. A British man, so this fella here, Jordan Chadwick, a British man who went to fight for the International Legion in Ukraine, was found dead in a body of water with his hands bound behind his back. Jordan Chadwick, 31, from Burnley in Lancashire, served as a Scots Guard in the British Army from 2011 to 2015. His mother, Brenda Chadwick, said her family were devastated by the death of her son, who was known as Joe. The Ukrainian International Army organised his repatriation on August the 7th. This continues. An inquest to establish the cause of Mr. Chadwick's death will be held in February, so still a while away. Mr. Chadwick told the BBC that he always wanted to be a soldier from a young age. His passion to support freedom and assist others with his skills led him to leave the UK and travel to the Ukraine in early October 2022. But on the 26th of June, Miss Chadwick said she was informed by Lancashire Police that her son had been killed. The Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the FCDO, contacted her the following day and confirmed the tragic news. She said, "Although we're extremely proud of his unwavering courage and resilience, his death has been devastating. No words can be found to describe the loss of such a short life. A son, brother, grandson, nephew and uncle who was loved immensely," an FCDO spokesperson said. "We're providing assistance to the family of a British man who died in Ukraine and are in contact with the local authorities." So let's look at then the statement that I was then sent across. Now remember, this statement was off a member, but again, this has some disagreement pieces in it from other guys I've spoke to, so grain of salt, but hey, Will. So Team 50/50, who we actually spoke about only yesterday in the podcast, and this is not related to that, but there's a team called 50/50, had a blue incident after call sign Gamma replaced with the previous team leader. This happened as a result of 50/50 taking heavy losses. Witnesses informed me the Gamma had instituted a form of selection with a former member of the British Special Air Service. One witness told me this created an elitic, toxic suicide culture which demanded unflinching loyalty to the team and a willing to fight no matter how stupid the mission was. This resulted in the death of a member of Team 5050 after an alleged selection gone wrong. He was found drowned with different water in his lungs. It had also been alleged that Hugs, an original team member, had drowned him alongside his team. A witness who was able to access Team 5050 confirmed they had been detained by military police and the SBU, the intelligence service, and were being denied medical treatment by the GUR Legion Command. So there are some big claims in this as well. At the end of the day, this is just what I was sent. Subsequently, the team was disbanded. However, no charges were laid and everyone walked. Now, this continues. This happened as the GUR Legion has never introduced the recommended S1 reforms ordered by the President, nor did they have effective or transparent forms of vetting, let alone any form of support for members. Additionally, attempts to introduce a credible and transparent legal cell capability of auditing and preventing this kind of behaviour have not been actioned by the commander in here, Vadim. With a GUR S2 member stating to me that I should send my war crimes investigator Glenn Kolowitz over to the Russians to try and make them more legal. In short, attempting to cover up corruption and incompetence within the military does not solve corruption and incompetence in the military. Now, I didn't know I was going to talk about this or not, but I just had to. I slept on it for a couple of nights, and there's just the horrific situation of this young man has really got me, and it's got me from back then as well. And this is just such a horrible situation. And it's one of those things, when I first found out about this weeks ago, I just felt fucking ill. Some people have told me not to talk about this because it does damage the reputation of those soldiers and those NGOs who are doing good work and they're doing the right thing. And it could then reduce support for them and increase the false narratives and propaganda in, I guess, the informational space. And I'm very aware of this, but my inner soldier agrees with that too. But as someone who cares about the truth and a journalist, I can't just not speak on this because no one deserves to have died like this. And it is absolutely horrible. So I guess rest in peace, mate. Anyway, we're going to look over some lighter stuff now. So there has been new photos being shared around too of a Russian fighter aircraft here in a hangar that has been temporarily made here. Now, this aircraft is in absolutely no way, shape or form going to be able to be airworthy at all, but these have popped up that we see in two images here that tend to show some sort of makeshift netting hangar here that could be against drones. Now, this won't stop like an air-bursting drone like we see the SIPAC cardboard. If you remember the video the SBU released, that airbursts and basically rains down fragment onto it. So this won't really stop that. But we've seen multiple photographs and videos of vehicles, artillery systems with almost like this netting cope cagey thing, but more like actually a net over it that can actually catch the drones as well, or with the warhead on whatever pre-detonate, and that of course then has a much less effect on the target from here. But sort of putting into what people were saying about the aircraft that we saw with the tyres on board of them, that they were older aircraft not being used and could be a somewhat of a dummy sort of deterrent maybe to make them be targeted here, but we're not really sure. But something like this could actually be effective against some things, won't be effective against others, but I guess you could just put some fucking thick tin on top of here and make it a lot more effective. You'd look like me as a kid putting bloody tin and tyres on top of the hay bales with my dad yelling at me. Anyway, maybe we'll see some actual proper hangars pop up. Now, the British MOD has released this as well. In Russia's Pskov Oblast, close to the Estonian border, the governor has organised volunteer security patrols to interdict further uncrewed aerial vehicle drones attacks against Kresty airbase. Reportedly, up to 800 citizens have signed up to join the patrols. This initiative follows the reports of two damaged Il-76 candid transport aircraft on the 29th of August. So these patrols are out because they know they had to be closer than Ukraine to come in and patrol for anyone operating drones out there. Due to the limited range of quadcopter UAVs, the attacks were on the base almost certainly launched from within the Russian Federation. The patrols will consist of groups of 50 divided among multiple municipalities, which will patrol border areas and critical infrastructure, particularly airports and air bases. So a little drone like I've got, like your Mavic 2, range of, in the paperwork they'll say 10 Ks, but you're really talking 5 or 6 max, at least from my experience. There are ways to boost your signal, I know that too, but the creation of these volunteer security patrols will likely act as a deterrent and provide a level of defence against quadcopter UAVs being operated from the immediate vicinity of the airbase. Historically, it has proven difficult to destroy UAVs using small arms fire, so Russian forces will still require air defence systems with a surveillance capability and both kinetic and electronic means of interception. To destroy attacking UAVs, the use of volunteers highly likely indicates a shortage of trained security personnel within Russia. So, as we know, drones are a big, big piece of this war and something that will move into all warfare as we move on to, and incredibly hard to take down. At least a big drone you can hit with like air defense. Your little bloody Mavic thing, well, it's not going to show up as big on radar. You can hit it, but is it going to be worth it? Your $1,000 drone with a grenade versus a bloody $100,000, $1 million missile, whatever. The little drones can be such a problem because they're so cheap. You can swarm them, all of this as well. It's going to become, and we're just at the very beginning of this ramp up of actual drone technology that we see used in warfare going forward. Now, there has been multiple statements that can relate also to the counter-offensive, both from Budanov and General Miley as well. So let's have a look over these. So we'll have a look first at the Chief of the Intelligence Service, of course, here, and Budanov. So he makes some interesting statements. This was only yesterday in the Yalta European Agency. He did a interview statement with them. So head of the main directorate of intelligence, Ministry of Defense, Ukraine, Kirilo Budanov, at the Yalta European Strategy. And he says, the war did not benefit Putin's regime. The economy cannot survive. This is a fact. Finances are kept in reserves, and the military power has lost a lot during the war. The professional army, in the general sense, ended last fall. Now they are fighting and mobilised. The production of new weapons and equipment is in an absolutely insufficient level. So he touches on a few things here. Here he claims that the professional army has gone. So it now is just mobilised people in the front, not the professional army that we saw before, that Ukraine has wiped them out on his claims. And the production of weapons and equipment doesn't meet how quickly they're using them on the front line, saying it is insufficient here. These are some large claims here. The Major General also shared his thoughts on a problem of escalation, noting that this is the first war where absolutely all types of weapons were used. What kind of escalation can we talk about if absolutely all types of weapons are involved? From submarines to strategic bombers. We all need to change the logic. Not everything is in the hands of the Russian Federation, and not everything is in the hands of other players on the world stage. Something depends on us as well. But I think the thing here missed is talking about nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons have not been used, but they are possessed in this as well. But Russia is using basically all of its other assets involved too. So he also warned against euphoria and hat-throwing moods, as the enemy is learning, including adopting successful Ukrainian tactics. And we have seen this. We have seen Russia change their tactics and fight in ways that are more similar to an improved military, or almost a Western way, in some terms of small groups, anti-armour, some of the movements of vehicles, things like this. In terms of creativity and flexibility, we can still beat Russia. Putin's regime is no longer so powerful, but this is still an insurmountable enemy, and you can't just say that everything is absolutely bad with them. They adapt. They built more than one line of defense. Well, but our movement continues, and this was the piece there. You can look that up yourself as well. So a few things in here which we can, poke a stick at if we want to, but we do see, and I've talked about many times watching a lot of the videos online too, that we have seen that Russia has adapted to some of these tactics as well. Is it too little too late? Well, it may be for a lot of those units that had huge losses in the beginning of this too, but we have seen that, and we have spoken about how dangerous that could actually be on the front line too. Like, if Russia actually had decent command and control, they would be a lot stronger force too. So the G20 summit has been held in New Delhi, but was not attended by President Xi Jinping from China, or of course President Putin, although there were representatives of both China and Russia present. Now, Ukraine also was not extended an invite to the G20. But that said, President Lula from Brazil has said that Putin can attend next year's summit in Rio without fear of arrest. Of course, this comes after Putin's arrest warrant from the international courts as well. But I will say I would be incredibly surprised if Putin would step foot on a plane, especially outside Russia's territory, for the rest of his life. Now he'll have he already had a big target on his head, but now it's like a massive. As I said, Ukrainian officials were not invited to the summit, but Ukraine is not part of the G20. But following the summit, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry said that the G20 had, quote, nothing to be proud of. Now, many have criticised the summit of being watered down in their statements and declarations regarding Ukraine, calling them generalised principles rather than a specific condemnation of Russia that the same group of leaders agreed when they met in Bali last year ago. So let's actually have a look over this declaration and what was made. Now, you can actually look this up on the G20 website, but it's like a massive PDF here. So there are some just quotes of it brought out here. The declaration, which in itself a concession that is lesser status than the usual communique, made several points concerning the war in Ukraine. It says all states must act in a manner consistent with purposes and principles of the UN Charter in its entirety. All states must refrain from threat or use of force to seek territorial acquisition against territorial integrity and sovereignty or political independence of any state, and the use or threat of use of nuclear weapons is inadmissible. Reaffirming that the G20 is the premier forum for international economic cooperation, and recognising that while the G20 is not the platform to resolve geopolitical and security issues, we acknowledge that these issues can have significant consequences for the global economy. We highlighted the human suffering and negative added impacts of the war in Ukraine with regard to global food and energy security, supply chains, macro-financial stability, inflation and growth, which has complicated the policy environment for countries, especially developing and least developed countries, which are still recovering from the pandemic and the economic disruption. I can't say that word on YouTube. Anyway, today's era must not be of war. Continued here some interesting things. That most members strongly condemn the war that is causing immense human suffering and exacerbating existing fragilities in the global economy. It's also acknowledged that there were other views and different assessments of the situation. So talking about where the war is now compared to when they met in Bali next year. It will be interesting it will be held in Brazil next year. If this war is still going then, it'll be interesting to know what the assessment from those most powerful countries in the world, part of the G20, is again of this situation. Now, of course, we're going to have a look over the maps, and I'm being cognizant of time. I'm trying to get these videos shorter. Of course, we have Ukraine in the center. Here is the capital of Kyiv. The red areas occupied since 22, the purple since 14. Now, the white lines you see, they are the train lines in occupied territory, but the white dots, these are then here, these are the defensive works that Russia has built, and it needs to be noted that they are still continuing to build these defensive works as well. Now, where we're going to first look at is, of course, down here. This is Robertini, but we're just going to go west of here, where we saw the most westerly real push so far of this counteroffensive, although I do think we will see more crosses of the Dnipro at some point as it is drying up, but is in Lobkovy. Now, this map doesn't show any change, although we did see a map correction to the south of Kamansky here about a week back. But let's have a look at what Syriac Maps says here. Now, when I do Syriac Maps, you'll need to see some days are 563 and some are 562 as I'm catching up 2 days. Now, the situation on the Zap front. During the last days, Ukrainian army managed to make small gains north of this, trying to overpass the town and head to the nearby Lhovy. So this, of course, Lobkovy. So they made some gain in and around this area here. Let's see if we can line where this is up. We see. Let's move this across for you. See these two paddocks here. This one comes down an angle, so talking just south of there. So just south of this paddock, which on this map does already show under Ukrainian control there, put out by those blue dots. Now we're just going to move further to the east here, and we have seen some shifts in here, which is not surprising. There's a hell of a lot of fighting going on here, where Ukraine has actually broken through the first and into the second line of Russia's defense to the south of Orokhiv after this border here was basically unchanged for well over a year. Now, let's step back to days. Now, we do see some interesting bits there. Let's go one day, and we do see to the northeast, Russia did make back a fair bit of ground in here, coming up to where this first offensive work just here is as well. And then we didn't see any other movement, and then 10th to then today, being the 11th, this map is about 6 hours old. We do see Ukraine have a significant push as well down to Novoporivka here, where we do know that Ukraine is trying to capture this area in here. Now, let's have a look over the multiple other maps we have of this area. So far as it's got even its own folder of what is going on there. So War Mapper here does show this sort of same push out to the west of Russia, and does show this southerly push into then this area here to the east of Novoporivka, as well as a push to the south down from Robotyny. Now, as well, the ISW does show similar-ish to what the deep state is showing on this push. Of course, this is Robotyny, this is Novoporivka here, just to the east. It does show, but I think it does show as well a lot more Russian territory here, but it does show they gained this amount here as well, which is very similar to what that is, but does show some minor differences just in the maps as well. So let's look then at what Syriac has said yesterday. Now, on 562, situations up front, Ukrainian army continue advancing slowly south of Robotyny, east of Novoporivka, and west of Verbove, where troops cross the Russian main defensive line from new sides. Of course, this is Verbove, Novoporivka, Robotyny, I can't talk. So south there, then, of course, then to the east of Novoporivka and into the west of Verbove, where they say the pushes are. And that lines up pretty much the same with the maps as well, but doesn't talk about then this Russian advance out to the west there, I don't believe, unless I read this incorrectly. No, I didn't. Anyway, Syriac today says this: the Ukrainian army continue advancing towards Novoporivka, taking control over several positions of the Russian army, included the ones of Robotyny, this which is under the complete control of Ukrainian forces. So a much larger push into here of the north east of Novoporivka is well pushing in there. So we can see where these maps have changed. And of course, this is in grey zone here, but taking up an amount of positions there. Now let's look at what the MOD says specifically about this area. Elements of the Ukrainian armed forces are advancing into the multi-layered main Russian defensive line east of the town of Robotyny. Ukrainian dismounted infantry forces are continuing to make gradual tactical advances against Russian positions and retreat Russian forces in the area. Ukrainian forces have also maintained pressure on Russian positions to the south of Bakhmut, making gradual gains between Klishkivka and Rivka. And we're going to go up into Bakhmut in a second and have a look. It is highly likely that Russia has redeployed forces from other areas of the front line to replace degraded units around Robotyny. These redeployments are likely limiting Russia's ability to carry out offensive operations of its own along other areas of the front line. The redeployments are also highly likely an indication of pressure on their defensive lines, particularly around Robotyny. So saying that the defensive lines aren't that good, and they're redeploying people from other areas. As we know, Russia is trying to have a push up in, of course, the northeast, but it has actually slowed down up there, and that does, I guess, line up with the MOD saying that they are bringing more forces into here, although it is said to be more mobilization in Russia to actually backfill these positions as well. Now, we're going to move up into is what I'm calling, I guess, the Uruzani front line here, although that may be incorrect, but that's how I remember it. So, of course, we did see Ukraine push down in through Uruzani and near Robotyny here as well, and there's increased shelling around Novodonetsky, Novomoylsky as well. So let's have a look in this area and see what is being said. So we're going to work west then to east. So Robotyny here, they're on 562, so yesterday. Situation southwest of Donetsk. During the last 4 days, Russian army managed to recapture territory north and northeast of Robotyny, forcing the Ukrainian army to retreat towards the lake area. So this is Robotyny, and the push up from here. So let's actually have a look at where this is. And we did see, 3, maybe 4 days ago, this where the Russians did make some ground in there, but it has been pushed down again over, it says, the last day. So maybe it went up and then back down. So let's just have a look. Of course, here's Robotyny, and we see where these two paddocks are. These are here. That it's saying that Russia has pushed up, and I guess a little, like a third the way into this paddock, and then across underneath this paddock and down here. So pretty much similar, except for this part in here. So it is interesting to see what is actually happening in and around there. But what other changes are we seeing around this area? Not really that much, just that Ukrainian pushback in that area. But if we then come to the east, in the center, we don't see any change. As you can see, it's just that blue line moving of more secure, but the front line doesn't change. But we do see this from the 9th to the 10th. And the 11th, there's no change, but we do see more push into Novomolsky here. We know Ukraine is having a significant push there and pushing down as well. Now, I forgot to say that ISW confirmed that Russia did have an advance near Prudotiny as well, but I digress. Back to Novodonetsky here too. So let's have a look. Situation southwest of Donetsk. During the last 4 days, Ukrainian army made a series of advances in the grey zone north of Novomolsky and managed to enter the first houses north of the town. Hours later, the following Russian artillery, the troops retreated to the northern shore of the Shitanka River. So as we know, there's a hell of a lot going on in this area, and there is a lot of fluidity in the front line of positions captured, recaptured, and as we've heard statements from officials before, 5 or 6 times a day in some cases. So let's have a look. So this is Novomolsky. This, of course, is Novomolsky here. So we see this funny shaped paddock here. This is this one. And the secure positions that run. Some of the paddocks are a little bit different, but just around in this area here, where we did see Ukraine have that advancement. And then Surak says pull back. But on this map, we did see that major shift into there and the crossing into the river and making that more grey zone across there. Now, we're going to go a bit more northeast, just to the north of Donetsk here as well. And we're going to talk then around about Pisky here as well and up into this bit of area here. So let's have a look at what then Suryak Maps says then about this. So on 5562, situation northwest of Donetsk city, the recent Ukrainian bombardment over Ukrainian positions in Pervomayelsky allowed to correct the front line in this axis, which also confirmed that Ukrainian army managed to recapture some positions there. So what we're going to be talking about is Pisky down here. What we're going to have to do is line up some then of these roads. We see this intersection is this intersection, and let's have a look at where the front line is then sitting through here. Now, I actually believe on this map that it shows Russia is a little bit further to the west than the Suryak is showing, because it lines up with this road here, saying across here, but it also showing that Ukraine exert more control over these fields in here and down to this next intersection, I believe here. Actually, it shows there's another one just there, so you're down into here somewhere too. So Ukraine had some advancement near Pisky there. Now we're just going to push up just a little bit more northeast below Avdivka into Opitny, where we do see Ukraine has had some advancement over the last couple of, say week, but has definitely crossed into the first bits of Opitny. Now, what is happening here? Well, this is the airfield here that I presume that they are then aiming for here, and they're within 2 kilometers. So let's have a look then at what Suryak Maps says. So, the Ukrainian-Russian war, day 562. Situation north of Donetsk city. Ukrainian army continue advancing towards the town of Opitny, taking control over new positions east of it. So, Opitny and into these areas here, which is shown and proven by the deep state, although it does show this area as grey zone, right down to see this road here. This is this one. So it does show more grey zone in and around Opitny as well. We know there's a lot of reported fighting there. But then if we cross onto the daily Ukraine map update and have a look in this area, it shows the same across Urazani, Robotyny as well. But if we cross then into north of Donetsk, into this area, we go back a day and we see Ukraine that advancement into Opitny, the line change. But we also see near Vesely up here, it does say that Russia had an advancement into, to the west of Vesely up here as well, which is very interesting too. And this is just where some of the maps do show slightly different, but that is the only differ between the daily Ukraine map update and the deep state as well today. Well, only major one. There may be some other little bits and pieces that I have missed. Now, we're then going to come further northeast, and then we're going to have a look, of course, in and around Bakhmut and see what is showing change on this map, and it isn't showing any changes, but we do have other maps saying that there are more changes in this area. So it is saying on the ISW that into Kurdimivka down here, so of course we've sort of got these three. We've got Klishkivka and Rivka Kurdimivka, where there's a lot of fighting going back and forward, both we see over the last say 10 days. We see Ukraine get positions, Russia get positions, back and forward fluidity there. That Ukraine managed to get more area around just to the west of Kurtamivka there, where we know Russia had that little like bulge out 3 or 4 days ago there. Now let's look at what then Syriac says. Situation south of Bakhmut, Ukrainian army reached the nearby outskirts of Andrivka from different axes and forced Russian army to withdraw from the village towards a railway station. So far, Ukrainian troops haven't entered the settlement yet. So Andrivka here, of course, here being Andrivka, that, let's have a look, line this up. That then this is Ukraine hasn't entered, but Russia has pulled out of this small settlement here as well. Back across, this is the railway, and we know Ukraine is trying to push for that railway to get onto a different axis, just like Syriac maps says there. So we've got one more area we're going to push. We're just going to zoom out a little bit, come to further north, and then we'll come into Spurny here. Now, there are no changes then seen on this map here, but there is said to be a small change here. So, Spurny. Right, let's minimise that one. Situation on the Eastern Front. The recent Russian bombardment over Spurny allowed to correct the frontline axis, which confirms Russian army is no longer present in the village. So there's a lot of corrections here, of course, then in grey zone and green and red here, which are showing all very similar, but some corrections there as well as new information comes in. But legends, that is all that I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed. If you'd like to support me, there's links down below, but never feel obliged. Go buy a coffee with your loved ones more so. Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.